Give me a hand. Hey. All right. Yes, a member of the Harrisburg Democratic Socialists of America. I'm also a member of the Industrial Workers of the World, also known as the IWW. You may know us as the Wobblies. And well, if I may be blunt, I don't have anything prepared, but I have had something on my mind a lot lately. I find myself, yes, as a person of color and as someone who is subject and vulnerable to systemic discrimination, but I also find myself as a person of immense social and economic and political privilege. I am a cis male Protestant, so that I want those of us who made all other forms of bigotry, you have to lose. That's a question that's been on my mind a lot over the past few years as I've found my politics evolving. What have you actually got to lose? Because you do have something to lose. There are things that I do not have to deal with as a cis, male, heterosexual Protestant. A lot of things that I've had people tell me about, people who are not any of those things that I just mentioned.
In Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, capital
I couldn't
steps.
even imagine. It's nice being able to walk down the street at any hour with my head held high and my shoulders back and not have to worry about someone taking that the wrong way. The fact that I'm existing on my own terms the right way. I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about my particular faith being underrepresented in popular culture in general. Now, I'm Episcopalian. You don't get much more Protestant than that, I must say. I don't have to worry about having to explain the very basics of my humanity. So yes, if we were to accomplish the things that we must accomplish for this, our human race, and for our planet to survive, I have that to lose. I have my privileges to lose. And you do as well. But what do we have to gain? And that's everything. When we give up our privileges, our class privileges, our racial privileges, our religious privileges, our gender privileges, privileges based on sexual orientation, we have so much to gain. We have a planet that we can share.
Jeffrey, can you please share this to my Twitter?
That can give us what we've always taken from it. Just food and water, shelter, everything else that we need. We can have each other and our ideas. All that we've heard that, we have 12 years to get this right, to keep our planet from going past the point of no return. And we can do it. We have all the resources, including each other. But we have to give up certain privileges to make that happen. We have that to gain. We have our home. We have each other and our ideas, ways that we can make sure that our lives are better in the future than they are now. But to those who find themselves in positions of immense privilege, you also have to gain from losing. Because being on top in that sort of way, in such an unnecessary way, is draining. Deep down, you know that. Having to put on airs, to be a tough guy because you're male, or to secure certain privileges because of your race, because you're white, having to all these hang-ups that come along with it. You can't date certain people, you can't be in certain neighborhoods, you have to be around the certain people so you can keep up your appearances. That's a lot of stress that you really don't need in your life. You have so much to gain by losing. If where we are right now, I'm preaching to the choir. I know that we all have the same basic ideas here. We want the same basic things. But for those of you who may be confused or may be outright hostile toward what we're doing, I implore you to reconsider, because you do have things to lose, but you have everything to gain. And it's scary. It's jumping onto a brand new plane of existence almost. But let's face it, things aren't great right now for everyone, for anyone, unless you are at that top 1%. And if you think they are, you can lose them just like that, because you said the wrong thing, usually because you did the right thing for someone. We can have a society in which we don't have to worry about our privileges, about keeping appearances. We can have a world.
Can somebody please ban Stephen Michael because he's a douche?
In school or in museums. We just have to have the courage to take that step and to give up certain things that we love or that we think we love, things that we cherish, but are ultimately holding us back. So once again, I'll close on this. For those who may not understand why we are here, and may not agree with why we are here today, I ask you, please reconsider. And I think you might find yourself in a happier place and with better friends than you do now. Thank you.
Woo!
Chris is so absolutely right. You will find yourselves in a better class of friends when you find common ground in your struggles and find a way to work through them without injecting race. And the reason why we're focused on white supremacy today is because that is what our government is. That is a staple in our government. That is the reason why many things were written, including the Constitution. We want to introduce one of the members of a group coming from Baltimore that's here to represent Baltimore, and also wonderful things that this group is doing for the youth in Baltimore, creating a system of community defense so that children grow up being concerned about their citizens and willing to protect them and step in when we already have seen the police have let our community down.
Yes.
We are no longer safe and have never been safe calling the police as brown people. So this group is a good way to find an outlet for peace and community ties. So Leon Smith Bay of the Black Wolves, there will be more of the Black Wolves to come and speak on their behalf. This is the first time, Leon.
So let me speak.
That was Catherine Lugaro. I've done double-digit rallies and protests with her here.
Good afternoon. My name is Leon Smith Bay. I am with the Black Wolves. We are from Baltimore, Maryland. Our full intent, thank you. Our full intent is respect, commitment, and humanitarian love. We find that we have put ourselves in great difficulty because we've been identifying each other by the color of our skin rather than the content of our character. And then I also find that most of the problems that man has, man created. We had things here on earth that were already resources for us to utilize. We tried to figure out ways to expand the resources because of greed. Greed seems to stand in the way a lot of times. Understand that it's enough for all of us, and it's enough space for all of us. And we don't have to react to one another based on the color of our skin. We can deal better on the content of our character. We are all a part of humanity. And trust me, whether we believe it or not, it affects us greatly. When anyone else is harmed, it affects us as well. It may be an indirect effect, or it may be a direct effect, but it affects us as a whole. We cooperate together, we operate together, we unify together, we're stronger together. We're stronger together than we are apart. A lot of times we want to find religious reasons to differentiate or sexual orientation. No matter how you feel about someone else's religious or political agenda, regardless, we are still a part of humanity. So that should be first and foremost, is our respect for humanity. I love you. I'm not going to say, if I see someone distressed, I'm not going to say, I wonder, is he a Jew or is he a Christian or is he homosexual? I'm going to say them first because my love is for humanity first. Aru? Aru! So with that being said, I just need us to understand that we were invited here, and I thank you greatly for inviting us, because we need to spread humanitarian love, period. And we need to stop putting borders to have us complacent about loving one another. Love is, last time I checked, every time I hear someone talk about God, they say love. So God is love, and if God is love, then God wants you to love his creations. Aru? Aru! All right, thank you all very much.
Can someone block that dude already? This is bullshit. People are pouring their heart out up here, and you guys are just letting him go. Block his ass.
Across the street, we want to welcome the Black Wolves to come across the street to meet everybody. We have a speaker coming up soon by the name of Brother Sharif, one of the leaders of the Black Love Movement in York, extending to Harrisburg and the local South Central PA area. Also the host of Hour of Power. Does anybody else want to come up and say anything from the Black Wolves? Anybody? Okay, so then I'll continue to talk. Okay, so it's important for us to have people that have movements such as the Black Love Movement, because we all know that our history has been hidden and erased from our vision. We weren't even allowed to read or write for a very long time. So that puts a big hamper on the things that we're allowed
Jenna,
to know.
you gotta block him because he's being mad disrespectful to people of color right now. He needs to be banned now.
You want to come up, Alan?
You want to wait a bit, or?
You can come up here. Okay, so if anybody would like to join in and speak a few words, please, Terrell, good. Coming up next is Mr. Alan Howe. He's local, and he is putting his foot in the door to run for president in 2020. So he would like to share what his vision is and what he is willing to do for the Black and brown community and people that are here as immigrants and refugees.
Well, good afternoon. Hi. As you heard, my name is Alan Howe. I am a retired Air Force veteran. Louder! I'm a retired Air Force veteran. Hi, Jordy. How you doing? Good. And a Democratic candidate for president in 2020. I didn't plan on speaking today, so pardon me if I ramble a little bit. This is kind of an emotional topic for me, as it is for most of the folks here. As an Air Force veteran, I'm very concerned about threats to our country, and so my presidential platform focuses on 4 threats, and number 3 on those threats is rising personal and institutional racism. Racism was tearing this country apart 100 years before Dr. King. It was tearing this country apart during the time of Dr. King. 50 years later, racism is tearing this country apart. It's American on American discrimination and violence, and we must bring it to an end. I'll tell you, I feel strongly enough about this that when I make trips to support my presidential campaign, I go to places like Charlottesville in August. I go to places like Ferguson, Missouri. I'm planning to go to places like Pittsburgh and Cleveland. I'm going to places like Flint, Michigan, where economic discrimination is destroying lives. I'm going to places like Dearborn, Michigan, and on and on and on. One of the proposals under this threat, as part of my campaign, go to how2020.org, you can read about it there, is that we treat hate groups in the United States the same way we treat terrorist groups. When we cross the globe to attack Al-Qaeda and ISIS and provide First Amendment protections for the KKK and neo-Nazis, we are instituting racism, and that must end. I tell people that my favorite place in the world is the space over the tidal pool in Washington, D.C. On one side of the tidal pool, you'll see a memorial to Thomas Jefferson. On the other side, staring sternly back at that memorial, is one for Dr. King. Now, Thomas Jefferson was no hero when it comes to civil rights, at least not directly. If you go down near Charlottesville and tour Monticello, the women who run that place will tell you that Jefferson held 600 slaves during his time, and in his lifetime he freed exactly 7, just 7. Now, there were laws against manumission during that time that made it difficult for him to free slaves, but don't forget ever that Washington freed all of his on his death. On the death of Jefferson, all of his slaves, along with the rest of his property, were auctioned off to satisfy his debts. However, Jefferson did provide the language that all men are created equal, that they are endowed with certain unalienable rights like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And King wielded those words like a club to push the American reality to more directly reflect the American ideal. And I think that's the space for all of us to work in right there. That battle between making America's reality reflect America's ideal. And I will tell you that this day and tomorrow and every day, I'll continue to work on that. I started running for Congress in January of 2017, not long after Donald Trump was elected president. Racist. Donald Trump is a racist. I started running.
Everybody going, anybody but Trump. We didn't agree. I think a lot of people's minds are changing at this point. But anyways, I want to welcome Mr. Terrell Turner, who is a local leader and activist, an advocate for statewide and national Medicare for all.
I've had Terrell on my show. Terrell! Woo!
How's it going, everyone?
Good.
It's not a beautiful day, but we can make it beautiful. Now, the word racism, it doesn't resonate with people anymore. It gets used a lot, and a lot of times it does apply, and it is just as it's just as we call it. But it's such a broad brush and has a negative connotation to it, and no one wants to see their lives as negative or what they're doing is negative. So a lot of people just dismiss it. So we have a lot of groups of people who we may identify as racist people, but they don't see it in themselves. Now we have a group of people who have a lot of privilege. They don't see that privilege because they were born into it, and that's perfectly fine. No one's trying to take that
Love
away.
you too, James.
But you do have to understand that you're socially higher on the ladder than a lot of black and brown people. That's not okay, but that's not your fault. And those are the people we can have conversations with all the time, all day, every day. Sometimes it takes a little longer for what you say to resonate because it's so far removed. We're creatures of habit. When you wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you go to work. That might be it for you. But people like me, I work really early in the morning, and sometimes when I see those Ford Explorers, I don't care if it has a police sticker on it or not. Every Ford, and what they see as racism, they only see the physical attributes of it. They see the verbal attributes of it, and that's what they call it because that's how they were trained to see racism. They don't see the systematic attributes of it, and they don't see everything that just happens on a daily basis. They don't see those things. So in their minds, if it is law, it must be. So when racism was law, it was racism. But now that racism isn't law, but it's snuck in through legislation, which turns into law and is what we experience, and you can't see it, it must not be. Still, those are people you can have conversations with, because those people will still listen, and they might not get it, but we can talk to those people. Finally, we have people like the KKK neo-Nazis. I didn't know Nazis would ever come back in my lifetime, but they're here. White nationalists. We have these people. And for whatever reason, you would think they would apply the word racism proudly as a badge of honor, something they will walk around with and talk about every day, but they don't. They still don't see themselves as racist. And you know why? Because racism has the negative connotation of a wrongdoing, and they don't believe that what they're doing is wrong. But why is that? You go back in history, and there are plenty of things that have happened. Their lives, they can do what they want. That's not the issue. But if you wake up in the morning thinking that someone is less than you, then you need to get your mind checked. Or at the very least, reevaluate what you consider to be morally right. A lot of these people identify themselves as Christian individuals. They forget about Jesus and the Sermon on the Mount, where he said, when he brought everyone to the table, it said everyone should be, he said, blessed are the poor. Blessed are the Jews and the Gentiles. That was about two different groups of people who didn't see eye to eye, but he was there to save everyone. So you can't claim to be Christian and simultaneously claim to be better than anyone walking this earth. And if that's not what you believe, that's fine as well. You don't have to be a Christian. Where do morals come from? They don't have to come from God. They can come from you. You can wake up in the morning and say, hey, I want to be a better person than I was the day before. Me personally, I grew up in Baltimore City. I grew up in a black community. I grew up in a Christian household. A lot of those things that I used to believe, I don't believe anymore. Because those things, a lot of those things, subjugated another group of people to a standard less than me. That wasn't consistent with who I wanted to be and who I wanted to grow as. Perfect example. I grew up thinking that something was wrong with people if they were homosexual. I grew up thinking that. I got past it. You know why? Because all it takes, and all it should take, is for you to see someone in pain, literal pain, or see them suffering, or see them being treated unfairly, for you to say, hey, you know what, that's not right. Why do I think that way? Why am I thinking like that person that's doing the oppression? That's not me. That's not who I want to be, and that's not who I want to be associated with. That's all it took for me. But for some people, it might take a little more. Fine. I don't know what it'll take. It won't take me talking, because I can talk all day. I can Facebook all day. I can make posts all day. That won't change it. What will change it is our allies. Because the problem us people of color have is the same problem a woman has when she walks to a mechanic saying what's wrong with her car. Because the mechanic will be like, oh, okay, well, this is what's wrong. As soon as a man who knows less than her on cars comes up and says, hey, this is what the problem is, mechanic will be like, okay, well, we can work that out. It's not about what you know, the knowledge you have, or what you believe you have to offer. It's about the messengers. Who's going to receive the message from who? It's about our allies. We need our allies. It's that simple. When women got voting rights, there were men willing to fight for it. It sucks that that's the case, but that's the case. You need to have strong allies. I don't believe, and this is a personal belief, I don't believe any person that's not of color can be a champion for people of color's rights. And the reason why I believe that is the same reason I don't believe any man can be a champion of women's rights. Because you have to be directly in the struggle. You have to know exactly what's going on, and you have to know exactly what you want to address and what's on your mind. You have to feel all of the pain before you can be a champion. You can be an ally, you can be a great ally, and I suggest you'll be a great ally. And I ask you to fight to be a great ally. That's what we need, great allies. Because the champions go down every day. We lose champions. We lost an elected official. We lost someone looking for office. We lose people all the time. What we want is simple. We want to walk down the street and say, hey, it's a good day. I don't like walking in stores and having people walk behind me.
Thank you.
I don't like being associated with a well-spoken person, as if me being speaking differently is the default. I can be educated, but I don't have to be. That's my right. Now, it's tough. I get it. It's tough to live your life every day and wake up and say, you know what? I want to change things. I want to make things better. It's tough. It's tough to do that because it takes you out of your comfort zone. It takes you away from everything you're used to doing. To fight for somebody when you have the luxury of just staying out. It's tough. I get it. I felt the same when it comes to women's rights. I don't have to fight for women's rights, but you know what? I have a wife. I have a mother. I have a sister. And there are a lot of women that I genuinely care for. So how can I not see their fight as my fight? Because if they go down, I go down next. Now, hypothetically speaking, let's just say every person of color in the United States were to go somewhere else or magically disappear. Just be gone. What do you think will happen next? I know exactly what will happen next. Every person that's poor, that doesn't have a lot, every white person that's poor and doesn't have a lot, can't get the A to B, is struggling to feed their families. Guess what? The corruption will still be here. The government and the systematic corruption will still be here, and they would be the problem. They would be the problem. They would be the ones who are used as a political strategy to escape all the problems that they caused themselves. Why do we have the immigration we have? Well, that's easy. We have a drug war. We're doing it here. We're doing it overseas. We're doing it across the border. And because of that, all that drug activity and violence, they're coming here because they see that we're causing a problem, and yet we don't want to deal with the ramifications of that problem. It would seem simple. It would seem as simple as saying, you know what, let's fix it. Let's get past it. No, that's not going to happen because it's that way by design. As long as they get to sit in their chairs, collect their checks, and go about their days and send their kids to private schools, none of which are getting shot up, they can keep going. They can keep going because they aren't the ones who have to pay. So we make them pay through our voices and electorally. Everyone's pissed they're getting these two options at the end of every race. These two options. That you don't like either one. Get involved with primaries. In primaries, you do have a choice over who goes forward. And you make sure that person, you fight as hard as you can for that person. Because if that person is representing your ideas and your ideology and the things you want to see for this nation or your city or your county or your state, if you see that person as the embodiment of that, and they're not going to be perfect, but if you see that person as what you want to see moving forward, you fight for that person.
Damn right.
Because when you fight for that person, you better be sure that they're going to be in there and they're going to fight for you. And if they don't fight for you, 2 years later they're gone. 6 years later they're gone. 4 years later they're gone. We are a nation of many election cycles. In Pennsylvania, there's an election every year. I'm tired of elections, but we got them every year. Municipal elections. You tired of that pothole? Get rid of it. Elect somebody. You tired of that person of color being treated like crap and council won't do anything about it? And the state won't do anything about it? Or the local police force won't do anything about it? You get rid of it. You have the power to get rid of them, and you have the power to not stay silent when you see things like this happen. You know why? Because The people who are causing all these issues, they are barking the loudest. And it makes us think that somehow we're in the minority of thinking. We're not in the minority of thinking. They're just barking louder. Let them bark. Let them continue to bark, because they won't stop barking. But what we can do is we can bark louder because we have each other. I want to say we always have and we always will, but that's not the case. I do believe that moving forward, we can change that situation. I do believe that. And, you know, I had, coming in today, I had something written down, and I just didn't use any of that. And the reason is, being a person of color, you don't need to write it down. You don't have to write down your experiences to remember them. You don't have to tell somebody, you don't have to come up with a better way to say what happened to you. Because what happened to you is what happened to you. You deliver it. You make sure it's authentic. It comes from your experience. It comes from your heart. It comes from everything you stand for, and you tell people. And if they listen to you, great. If they want to do something about it, better. And if they want to fight for you, that's the best thing you can ever ask for. Any of us can ever ask for. So, you know, while I wish there were more people here today, and I know that my hands are cold. Cut myself with a knife this morning, trying to separate some ground beef. Not an excuse not to be here. I love it. I love talking to people. I love when people talk to me. That's who I am. But if everybody saw that, that would make things a lot easier. I'm wearing all black. I walked out of the car, somebody crossed the street. They could have been doing anything, but I've been conditioned to believe that they were avoiding me. I don't know. I don't even like thinking that. Because in some way, that's me projecting a judgment onto someone else. But through self-preservation, you have to think these things through. Because you don't know what turn the corner might bring you. So again, I do ask everyone here, you see the fight, you know exactly what's going on. You see the people who fan the flames. You see the people who openly hate, but they don't call it hate, of course. They call it a lot of things, but don't want to call it hate. And that's fine. They don't have to call it hate. They don't even have to call it wrong. But what you have to do,
Terrell was on my show on the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. So if you guys want to check out more of him, definitely go back, because we did a great show with him and another man of color. We had a great debate.
I talk to him all the time. I have friends I grew up with that are doing things that half of it is circumstance, the other half is choice. And I do talk to those people. And I thank God, if you believe in them, that some of those individuals have come out on the brighter side of things. And I don't know if it was my conversations that did it. I'm not sure. I would like to think I helped. And if I did, great. And if I didn't, I'm just glad they're on the other side. We are a race of human beings, and like it or not, we're all going to be here together until the end. And with the way things are looking, the end might be in the next 100 years. But we are here together. We have to stay together. We have to hold each other accountable. I'm not perfect. When I slip, you hold me accountable. You tell me what I did wrong. Because if I did something wrong and I don't see it as being wrong, and you tell me it's wrong, you explain to me why it's wrong, I'll correct it. Because I don't like being wrong. I really don't. I don't like being wrong in an argument. I don't like being wrong when I'm driving. Nobody likes being wrong when they're driving, but you don't like it. So correct me. I don't have a problem with being corrected. But I do have a problem with being disrespected. And if you don't like the fact that I'm disrespected for arbitrary reasons, things I can't change, you stand up with me. I appreciate everyone for being here today. I really do. This isn't something I take lightly. Me being from Baltimore and moving to York County, I see a lot of the same struggles. I thought that when I moved from the city, things would change. Not for me personally, but for what I saw in communities as far as drugs. It doesn't change. It's all the same struggle. It doesn't change. Certain groups of people do face more scrutiny and more punishment, but people are all going through the same thing in some shape, form, or fashion. I moved from Baltimore where people were doing all types of drugs. I moved up here, they're on opioids. A crazy amount. Neighbors, people down the street. If we took the village mentality and actually applied it, we could do wonderful things. If you saw your neighbor hurting as a form of pain to yourself, you could do something about that. I grew up in a neighborhood where when I did something wrong and my mom wasn't home, she knew about it when I got home because there were neighbors telling on me all the time. Well, that's where I grew up because everyone held themselves accountable for my safety because they saw that we were the people that were going to grow up. We were the people that were going to inherit these homes and take care of them in turn. We need to bring that mentality back. Because if we don't have that, that truly is the end. Now, I don't want to sound bleak or grim because I don't think this is a bleak or grim event or opportunity. This is a wonderful opportunity. I'm thankful that anyone's here. But I do want to enforce the idea that alone you might feel powerless to a lot. And it's true, there's a lot you can't do by yourself. But we can do a lot together, and we will do a lot together. I'll hold everybody to that. The same way I expect you to hold me to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Terrell, so much. So I wanted to touch on what Terrell said. What is not our problem as people of color? What is not our problem is white supremacy. That's not our problem to solve. That is white people's problem to solve within their own community.
Yes.
It is our job to speak up and inform people as to what it is that makes us feel oppressed. How can you help as white allies? You can help by being self-aware. You can help by being a good neighbor to your neighbors, not making their life a living hell because they're immigrants. Being supportive and understanding that if you find yourself standing at a political rally, voicing your opinions, and you are having common ground with all the people around you, and you look and find yourself in a place standing around Confederate flags or Nazi swastikas, you might want to reevaluate your political views and understand how it is that you are hurting the situation that's going on in this country instead of helping it. The reason why Terrell didn't need to read off his speech is because he's inspired by the criminalization of his skin, and so am I. We don't need speeches. We have heart and soul and experience, and as a white ally, we would appreciate if you guys could just please listen to our experiences, listen to what we say is something that's hurting us, and be willing to help, even if it's just listening and continuing to listen until you feel you have a good understanding. So we can't be afraid to say things like Black Lives Matter. Why? Because we're not saying that white people's lives don't matter or Puerto Rican lives don't matter. I'm Puerto Rican. I say Black Lives Matter because Black lives have not mattered. And all lives won't matter until Black Lives Matter. That's the point. That's the point. During the Civil Rights Movement, we see pictures of a lot of black men with signs that say, "I am a man." It's important to understand that the reason why these obvious statements need to be made is because they haven't been recognized in the past, and our lives haven't been recognized in the past. And in fact, our lives are constantly being snuffed out by law enforcement, by hate groups, And meanwhile, the average centrist neoliberal makes excuses for why we are dead. And walking past the TV and seeing a black man killed by police and wondering, gee, I wonder what it is that he did. That is also a form of white supremacy.
Yes.
Those are the little things that mean so much to us to be aware of within yourselves. So I want to introduce Ms. Shavanya Corbin. She was a candidate for the 10th Congressional District here in this area. And P.S., I really wanted her to win.
Me too!
Shavanya was the best candidate for the job, so we're very grateful to have her here.
Woo!
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, hello. As I want to start, I want to say, my name is Shavanya Corbin Johnson. And before I begin this, I want to start by thanking each and every one of you who are here, because you see the need to get rid of this continuing threat of white supremacy that plagues our society today. So thank you all for being here. I stand before you as a black, straight, Christian, American-born woman. And I say that to say, because it shouldn't matter if your skin color looks like mine, or if it's lighter, or if it's darker. It shouldn't matter if you pray to who I pray, if you pray to someone different, or no one at all. I say that to say, because it doesn't matter if you love who I love, or if you love someone other. I say that to say, it doesn't matter if you're born in this country, or if you just arrived this morning. This is your country. You belong here. Este es su país. I want to give a quick story. I had the privilege of going to Georgetown University for my bachelor's degree. And one day I was leaving the front gate, walking the 10 blocks to the closest CVS in the Georgetown area. It was raining outside. So I fastened up my black hoodie and I put my hood on and I started my journey to CVS. About halfway through, I got stopped by a police officer. And he said, "Excuse me, lady, you don't belong here." And I looked at him and I said, "Sir, I do belong here." And we went back and forth, the officer and I, him telling me again and again, looking me up and down and saying, "I don't belong here." And unfortunately, I had to pull out my student ID to give him some sort of satisfaction that I did belong here at Georgetown. I was a part of that community. And eventually the officer left. Feeling disrespected and dejected, I zippered up my hoodie again and I put my hood on and I continued my journey. But do you know who could not put their hood on and who could not continue their journey? Trayvon Martin. We need to put an end to the unlawful killing of black women and black men here in America. We need to put an end to the ethnic cleansing of Native American history and culture that are the foundations and the threads of this country. We need to put an end to swastikas on the walls, bombing of mosques and Sikh gurdwaras. We need to put an end to putting children, Latinx children in courthouses and tear gas. Yes, my friends, tear gas, not in war, but here on our borders. White supremacy affects our education system, it affects our healthcare, our immigration, how much we get paid, and who is allowed to be here.
And this is why I voted for her.
It affects our government in totality, and we need to put a stop to it. We need to stand together. I want you to shake your neighbor's hand right now. Everyone, shake your neighbor's hand. Whether you know him, whether you know her, or whether you know they, we are all here and we are all united today. We need to make sure we continue to be the United States of America. My name is Shavanya, and I'm here today because I believe in having a wholesome society. Layla is here because she believes in it. Catherine is here because he believes in it. Even Leon and his group all the way from Baltimore, Maryland are here because they see that white supremacy is a threat to our society and it's a threat to the justice which America was created on. One of my favorite people in the world, Martin Luther King Jr. used to say, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And my friends, I ask you today, let's bring back justice. Thank you.
Woo! So I voted for that freaking amazing woman, and she lost just by so few votes, to a neolib.
If Shivanya
Totally
runs again,
progressive
she should not only have our
platform.
vote, but we should have her back.
Hell yeah!
Hit the streets like hardcore, because I do feel like we would have won. Amongst other people that should have won and that we would have won, but
Amen to that.
you already know. So I want to introduce Sharif Hamid. I'm sorry, I can't breathe. He is a good friend of mine. I've been friends with him since we were 15 years old. And he is now leading the Black Love Movement in New York, doing so much to educate Black children and help the community, and also host of the Hour of Power. So, Sharif. Sharif! Is he coming or no? Coming. Here he goes.
She had $15 hour wage. She had job security. She was the only progressive running. I was so happy to vote for her. And she barely lost. I mean, we only needed so few votes again.
Man, that's what I'm fucking talking about. Dude, I voted for her. I fucking love her. Her Spanish is beautiful, and she can dance salsa.
Wanted to bring my good brother, Mr. Proctor, on to give some enlightening spoken word. Again, we're from.
Do I talk louder into the
Okay,
microphone?
yes, we're from York, PA. We have the Hour of Power, which is a TV station that comes on every Wednesday, channel 16 local access TV. But you can only access that if you're in York, and then Facebook Live under Sharif Hamid. It's a YouTube channel and a TV station that enlightens the community, particularly Black and brown people. But I want to bring my good brother Gerald Proctor on to give some enlightening spoken word.
I opened my mind instead of closing my fists, and I realized that racism still exists. I'm not gonna let the world define me by my color. Let me speak to all of my sisters and brothers that stand in unity, that stand for the fight, doing what's real and doing what's right. I will be loved before I'll be judged by who I am instead of who they thought I was. I am powerful. I am unity. I am a strong and present man in the community. I am what I'm supposed to be for those that are distant and close to me. I'll be the Black man to give you something to believe in. I am righteous. I am the reason. I stand in the gap for those that came before me. This is a new chapter, a whole different story. I'm Black, I'm proud, I'm separate, I'm equal. My skin doesn't define us because we're beautiful people. The battle's not over, it's still being fought. So you're not born ignorant, ignorance is taught. This is a movement, this is not a game. And like the people say, put some respect on my name. My expectations in life are the same as yours. And you wanna know what I'm really fighting for? For every blood drop that was shed, for every tear that was cried, for that child was born today, for every Black person that died, at the wrong time or at the wrong place, not for doing something wrong, but for the color of their face, for those that have the power in their silence, for those who are educated and not nonviolent, for those that are still here and never giving up, for those that are allowing themselves to throw their fist up. All we are is all we can be. I'm proud to be Black, Black like me. Amen.
That's our good brother Gerald Proctor from York. He works in the school system there in York, and he's doing a lot to lift the mind, body, and soul of our youth there in PA through sports and guidance. So salute to you, brother, for that. We also have some brothers from Philadelphia with the UNIA, which is the Universal Negro Improvement Association, with our great ancestor Marcus Garvey, a person who has deliberately been trying to be buried in the history, but we're going to bring his spirit alive today and moving forward, because we believe that is a solution to our issues, our great ancestor Marcus Garvey. So brothers,
peace, everybody in power. I'm Mark P. out of Philadelphia, Division 129, UNIA. I want to tell the people, when you see this flag, red, black, and green, this came from the UNIA. This is not a flag about hate, but this is about us loving our people. You see what I'm saying? So when you see the red, black, and green, give honor, respect this, and if you look like me, you should have one of these.
That's right.
You know, right now, it's time for us as a people, and when I'm talking about the people who look like me, Africans in America, it's time for us to organize the government. And that's what the UNIA is about. It's time for us. We don't have to beg. All we need to do is organize the government. So I'm here to hopefully motivate the people in Harrisburg to get 7 committed people and organize the UNIA right here. That's all I need to say. Peace and love.
Well, as always, open with the hour of power. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful, we give him praise and thanks for his mercy and his goodness to the human family. If all the trees upon the earth were pens to write with, and if all the oceans were ink, and then another 7 oceans to add to its supply, the writing would still not be enough to explain the glory of God, for he's the exalted, all-powerful, all-wise. We confide in no other in our time of need, and we praise no other in our good fortune. He is one. And even if I live to be 1,000, it would still not be enough to thank God for his many blessings and gifts. We confide in no other in our time of need, and we praise no other in our good fortune. I greet everyone in words of peace. To my Christian family, praise the Lord. To my Muslim family, assalamu alaikum. To my Hebrew Israelite family, shalom. To my black conscious family, hotep. And to my people in the streets, what's good to you. And to my enemies and our enemies, you're welcome too. And we hope that you learned something, and whoever you're reporting to, you can take back that we are here for peace, knowledge, and understanding. No one is shooting, no one is stabbing, no one is acting a fool. We are here for peace and understanding, but unadulterated truth. And that's what the movement that I have in York, PA is about. It's called the Hour of Power. You can look it up. Peace to my family back home. Peace to my producer who helps me out with the channel. I'm a therapist and a counselor in York, PA. In these last couple of months, October, November, as I go into the classroom all around York and hear the lies that's being told to these children, especially this time of the year, make my skin crawl and cringe. Not for my own personal thing, but because it's a lie. And the terms that I want you to listen to as I'm speaking is cultural assimilation and cultural transformation. Get in tune with those terms, cultural assimilation and cultural transformation, and forced relocation, even though it's coming from a historical point of view, because the name of this talk is 500 years of indigenous resistance. What do we do now? I'm not going to be long, but you may have not heard this before. 500 years of indigenous resistance. What do we do now? Indigenous is those who were there first, natives. And this is the lies that's been told as I sit in the classrooms. Back on October the 8th, children were made basically to take off for Columbus Day. A murderer, a rapist, a pedophile, and he gets a holiday. This isn't what I think. It isn't what I feel. This is historical knowledge that you can go and Google. And then just a couple weeks ago with Thanksgiving. Who's Thanksgiving? Who's Thanksgiving when the Native Americans, through the Puritans and the Pilgrims, were slaughtered because of genocide? And I always bring my references. You ain't gonna see these books in the school system. The Hidden History of Massachusetts talks about how the Puritans came into northeast of America, better known as Massachusetts. Listen to that word, Massachusetts. That's a Native American term. They came in there, slaughtered the Pequot Indians, men, women, children, and the elderly, and cut off one of the Indian chiefs named Metacomet's head and put his head on the table and said, this is the real Thanksgiving. From us discovering a new land, when these people welcomed them in, this is in the 1600s, welcomed them in, and they took over and slaughtered them. Not what I think, not what I feel, absolute fact. And back to this character, Christopher Columbus, a man that never came here. He never came here. He only came to places like Salvador, right? Honduras, Jamaica, Haiti. Never came here. And he did the same thing. He actually made 4 voyages here. And the only ones brave enough to come with him were criminals because they thought the world was flat. Queen Isabella and them sent him here. But not here, but disease, terror, and genocide. And he actually, when he went back to Queen Isabella and others, he was actually in shackles and chains because the criminals was telling on him what he was doing. Raping children, slaughtering the people. And he said, wait a minute, these people are unskilled when it comes to weapons, but they're very nice. So she sent him back on a second voyage to those areas where he starved dogs for 3 days, and the dogs went into the wild to rip the Native Americans to pieces. And they took over the land, and he brought disease. This ain't being taught in the school. Everywhere you go, every city you go, Columbus Street, Columbus University, for a murderer. But Martin Luther King, in I believe it was 86 under Ronald Reagan, he had to fight like hell just to get a holiday. And in Arizona, didn't even want to respect it. What did he ever do to anyone? But a murderer gets a holiday. This is the untold history of America. 500 years of indigenous resistance. What do we do now? So we got Christopher Columbus coming to not America, but the islands, ravaging the islands with disease and terror, ripping these people apart, cutting off their fingers. He's done horrific things. And he gets a holiday. And then what happened with the Native Americans in the late 1600s, with the Puritans, it's all in this book. And many others. This isn't no rocket science. But the children are being lied to. 500 years of indigenous resistance, moving up through the 1500s. We know what happened to us as African Americans or black people, stolen out of Africa and brought here. I know this is rough, but it's the truth. How can we say and preach to our children the truth when they ain't being taught the truth? They're being taught lies in the school system. Native African Americans stolen out of Africa, brought all over to Brazil for forced labor. Forced labor. And then Kanye West says, well, you know what he said. What in the hell is wrong with him? He needs help. He needs therapy. The African Americans, the black people, brought here for forced labor in the 50s, and even named one of the ships Jesus. This is history, right where these young men are from. It's a Blacks and Wax museum. We took 30, 40 youth from New York and Baltimore, and we taught them their real history, how they named some of the ships Jesus with the African American Holocaust. That's in the 1500s, and moving through 500 years of indigenous resistance. But what I would really want to speak on, and then I'm gonna wrap up, is the Native Americans, what they suffered, and others who no one talks about. In 1788 in Australia, you can look this up, the Holocaust of Black Aborigines in Australia actually met an ancestor, not an ancestor, a descendant of the ancestor there. How the British went through there in 1788 and actually massacred the whole island, which they know now is St. Torres in Australia. The British went in there, poisoned the land, the food, and everything. Still to this day, the Australian Aborigines, their life expectancy is only 55. Because not what happened 600 years ago, 700 years ago, 1788, all the way up through the 19th century. Poisoned the land, the food, and the water, and they were so brutal. 500 years of indigenous resistance. They were so brutal that they actually made a game out of what they did to these people. They already knew the land, meaning the British that came in. They already knew the land at gunpoint with the Australian Aborigines, who were actually black people. They would give them an hour head start and said, run for your life. But they already knew the land, so they knew where they were going to run to. And then they would catch them and murder them. Just totally decimated their numbers. If you look at the old school show, The Incredible Hulk, with Bill Bixby, back in the 70s, they actually made a show mimicking what they did to the Australian Aborigines. Flew over most people's head. I have my references. You can look it up. It's called The Snare. If you look up this show, meaning with the Bill Bixby in the original Incredible Hulk, not the Marvel Comics, the original one. May he rest in peace. You know, he was always getting into something. Bill Bixby. He was at an airport, he missed his flight, and this rich man said, I see you missed your flight. You can come to my island with me and I'll get you back here the next day so you can catch your flight. What he didn't know is the man drugged him while they were eating and playing chess. This is called The Snare, S-N-A-R-E, if you look up the original Incredible Hulk. He drugged him. When he woke up, he was in a ditch. Look at the spiritual connection. Y'all really go deep. He was in a ditch, and it was a recording there, and he said, I got tired of hunting animals, so I took on the sport of hunting humans. You got 1 hour, and then I'm gonna come find you. But what he didn't know is that David Banner had a little friend inside of him, as we know as the Incredible Hulk. They got that right from what they used to do to the Australian Aborigines from 1788 into the 19th century. 250 massacres there, millions. And then they tell the children, again, cultural assimilation and cultural transformation, they tell the children in Australia right now that your ancestors died from disease. No, they didn't. They were poisoned and murdered. 500 years of indigenous resistance in Australia. Life expectancy only 50. The water, wherever they go. This is great.
You guys, I'm so sorry, but my backup battery is done. So I'm going to try and save what little battery I've left to interview some of these amazing people. So I will be back as soon as I can.
And us too. Thomas Jefferson, George